All right, so are you ready to dive deep? Because today we're going to be talking about your all-time favorite, natural selection.
Always a popular one.
Yeah, right. So picture this. England, 1859. Charles Darwin is about to, completely rock the world with this book on the origin of species.
Yeah, it's one of those books that, really changed how we see the world.
Totally. And we're going to unpack some of the coolest parts, especially the stuff about natural selection, which I know you're all super interested in. So everyone's heard that phrase, survival of the fittest, right?
Yeah.
But Darwin's book, it went way beyond that. He was fascinated by something else, like the incredible variety, the differences within species.
Right. It's not just about who's the strongest, it's about all those tiny differences that make each individual unique.
Exactly. And get this, Darwin, he was obsessed with this idea of variation, and it led him to some pretty unexpected places, like, wait for it, pigeons.
Pigeons! Okay, now I gotta know, how do pigeons fit into all of this?
Okay, so Darwin, he was a pigeon breeder, and he studied them like crazy.
He was really into those pigeons.
Seriously. And through those pigeons, he had this, huge aha moment. He realized that if humans can breed pigeons to have certain traits, like those crazy feather patterns.
Yeah, some of those pigeons look pretty wild.
Right. He realized that nature could be doing something similar, but on a way grander scale over, millions of years.
It's like nature is running its own giant breeding experiment, shaping life over time.
Totally. And that's what natural selection is all about. Nature, it's like this filter. It favors those individuals, even with the tiniest advantage.
It could be anything, right? Like being a little bit faster, better at camouflage, more attractive to mates.
Exactly. Anything that gives you an edge. And those tiny wins over generations and generations, they can add up, leading to entirely new species. But you know what? Back then, this was a radical idea.
Oh, totally. Back then, most people believed in the fixity of species, right? The idea that species were created exactly as they are, unchanging.
Yeah, like set in stone.
Exactly. And Darwin, he basically flipped the script completely. He showed that species, they're not static, they're constantly in flux, they're always changing, always evolving.
And that change, it's driven by this process of natural selection.
It was a huge shift in thinking.
Totally. But Darwin's genius, it didn't stop at animals.
Huh.
He saw natural selection happening everywhere, even in, plants.
Oh, yeah. Plants are amazing. They might not move around like animals, but they've got their own ways of surviving and thriving.
Absolutely. And Darwin, he was particularly blown away by flowers. Have you ever noticed how different flowers have, such crazy shapes and colors and smells?
It's true. There's such a huge variety.
Right. Well, Darwin, he realized that all those differences, they weren't just random. They were actually carefully crafted by natural selection to attract certain pollinators, like bees, moths, you name it.
Each flower has its own target audience.
Totally. It's this incredible example of how interconnected life really is.
It's like nature is this giant web, and every species, every plant, every animal, it's all connected.
It really makes you think, huh?
It does, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like nature's own puzzle, right? Each piece, each species has been, perfectly shaped over time to fit right into its ecosystem.
It's true. And what's really cool? Darwin, he knew that his ideas were going to be kind of controversial.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Challenging the accepted science of the day.
Totally. And he actually tackled some of the toughest questions head on on the origin of species, like one of the big ones. How could complex organs, take the eye, for example, how could something like that have evolved gradually?
Yeah, it's not like an eye can just, poof, appear out of nowhere, right?
Right. It's a question that had puzzled scientists for, centuries. But Darwin, he had this really elegant answer: gradations.
Gradations.
Yeah. Imagine an organism, and it just has this simple light-sensitive spot on its body.
Okay, so it's not really seeing, more like sensing light.
Exactly. But even that, that tiny bit of sensitivity, it would give it an advantage, right, over organisms that were totally in the dark.
Oh, for sure. Even a little bit of information is better than none.
Right. So over time, any little improvement to that spot, maybe it deepens a bit, forms a pit, or maybe the covering gets thicker and starts to act like a lens, those tiny changes would be favored by natural selection.
So it's like each tiny step makes the organism just a little bit better at surviving.
Exactly. And those little changes over millions of years, they can lead to something as complex and amazing as the eye.
It's mind-blowing when you really think about it. But, of course, there were skeptics back then, people who weren't so quick to jump on the Darwin train.
Oh, absolutely. There always are, right? And one of the big challenges Darwin faced was this. The fossil record at the time, It didn't really show all those transitional forms, you know?
Like, if evolution is this gradual process, you'd think we'd find fossils of every single step along the way.
Right. You'd think so. And that was a big question for Darwin, and he tackled it head on. He said that the fossil record, it's valuable for sure, but it's inherently incomplete.
It's like trying to tell the entire story of human history with just a few photographs, right? You're going to be missing a lot of details.
That's a great way to put it. Darwin, he pointed out that most organisms, they don't even fossilize well to begin with. And even when they do, things like erosion can wipe out huge chunks of the fossil record.
So it's like trying to piece together a giant puzzle, but with half the pieces missing.
Right, exactly. And on top of that, we haven't even explored the entire planet yet. We're still finding new fossils all the time.
It's true. There could be countless amazing discoveries still waiting out there. So it's less like we have a complete picture of the past and more like we're getting these intriguing glimpses.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes studying evolution so fascinating. There's always more to learn, more to discover. And Darwin, he recognized that.
He was ahead of his time in so many ways. But, the biggest impact of Darwin's work, it wasn't just about, like, plants and animals and fossils.
No, it was much bigger than that.
Right. It was about how we see ourselves, our place in the grand scheme of things.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, we're part of this huge story, this epic tale of life on Earth constantly changing, evolving.
It's humbling, right?
Yeah.
And awe-inspiring. We always talk about evolution like it's something that happened, way back when. But it's happening right now, all around us.
Exactly. I mean, that's why Darwin's work is still so important today. His ideas about natural selection, they're not just about the past. They help us understand the present and even, like, predict the future.
It's like he gave us this incredible tool, this new way of looking at the world and seeing all these connections, these patterns we never would have noticed before.
It's like suddenly you see those tiny variations, those adaptations. They're not random anymore. They tell a story of survival, of change, of life finding a way.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Darwin's work so powerful. It's not just about knowing where we came from. It's about using that knowledge to, like, navigate the future.
Exactly. And to appreciate just how interconnected everything is. Darwin, he found those big discoveries in the smallest details, like those pigeon variations, the way flowers attract pollinators. It makes you want to look at the world with fresh eyes, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's like Darwin's giving us a challenge, He's saying, go out there, pay attention. You never know what incredible things you might discover.
And that's what we're all about here on the Duck Dive, right? Encouraging that sense of wonder, that curiosity about the natural world.
So next time you're out there, take a moment, look around you, really see the details, and think about Darwin. Think about those big questions he was asking. And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to make the next groundbreaking discovery. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. But trust me, this is just the beginning. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and we'll see you next time for another exciting journey into the world of ideas.